The cursed blight started in the winter of 1845, and the famine had been with us 5 long years. Potatoes were our lifeblood. Now folks got terrible sick trying to eat the black and rotten spuds. In every cottage the starvation found us, then the sickness, then the dying. Hospitals and workhouses filled, jails bulging their seams with the homeless and the rebels. What little we had was taken from us and shipped to the landlords in England. On top of it all, they sent their cursed agents to demand the rents from us. Oh, the misery of foreign rule. And more dead. Fishman a foe he can reach with his fists, and you'll see a real Brannigan. But hunger and plague and dying, that's boxing shadows. You can't lay a hand on 'em. In April of 1846, in the village of Skibbereen in the County Cork, I, Dennis Mulligan, took my love, Kathleen McGee, for better or worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. We got the poorer in no time, and the worse even sooner. And a terrible sickness was all around us. Kathleen and myself discussed it like we had a choice, but there was no choice. It was leave or die. It was more scared than sad I was when I closed the door to the cottage I'd been born in. Father O'Shea blessed us and hugged us both. We set foot for the States, looking backward as much as forward. Scared witless, that's the truth of it. The luckier for not knowing, chances were 1 in 3 we wouldn't live to become citizens of the USA. It was a bad voyage right from the start. 514 of us crammed aboard that coffin ship Virginius, not counting rats and other vermin too numerous to mention. They fed us 1 bowl of pork and beans and a cup of water a day, not including the vinegar we added to the water to cover its smell. It was dark and cramped. Murderous fights breaking out from the rage couldn't be held. Mostly, it was silence. Just the sound of children's nightmares and the bilge water sloshing through the floor. And there it was! So many sheep at the stockyards. It was a health inspector put the fear of God in us. We knew well what quarantine meant. But Kathleen and myself were young and fit enough. We passed the health inspector. Streets of gold, how are ye? From Washington Street in the first ward to Trinity Place in the third to Mulberry Street in the sixth. 43,000 tenements in New York was packed with 1.5 million souls. Down in these fever nests where the rag pickers and bone gatherers slept in the hallways and alleys, there was typhoid and smallpox, scarlet fever and diphtheria. And with the TV taking so many of us, they named it the Irish disease. And the children, it was said they were born to die. But there was work to be had, and you could see the Irish who'd crossed the ocean 50 or even 100 years before and who'd done well. After all, there was more Irish than English who signed the Declaration of Independence. A couple of them, Protestants mind you, even got themselves elected president. But we greenhorns scrabbled for jobs against Germans and blacks as well as each other. No work was too hard or too dangerous, no pay too low, not when you knew there was always a man waiting for you to give up. Off the boat now, but still in steerage. Still in steerage, while others strolled the deck. In Boston, they say the living conditions was even worse. Beggars roaming the streets day and night. Aye, there was drunkenness and violence, no doubt about that. Taxpayers up in arms saying as how we were an intolerable burden. But could we be helping it, us all lumped together? Nothing more than animals. Most of us were hard-working people when we could get the jobs. They even poked fun at that. They even invented new words to mock us. We were micks, harps, paddies. And they said we used shovels for spoons. Bricks they called Irish confetti. And the wheelbarrow was our buggy. Some even said it was the only way to teach an Irishman to walk on his hind legs. I say better a four-legged Irishman than a two-legged jackass. They blathered out we was only good for cheap labour, no use in a decent trade or business. Greenhorns, they called us, ignorant, drunken, brawling, the lowest of the low, and never to be allowed in a decent neighbourhood. So we stayed on our own, and it wasn't all bad either. What with weddings and wakes to be going to? Nights of talking, drinking, laughing and crying. Even with myself toiling in the sewers and Kathleen uptown washing other folks' laundry, we always had a kind of pride. 'Twas hard labour for miserly pay, but at least there was no English soldiers waiting to take it away, us along with it should the fancy take hold. And then there was Father Donahue, good times and bad, reminding us life renews itself. John joined us on St. Valentine's Day. We were expecting him on St. Patrick's Day, but a saint is a saint and no matter at all. Timothy Patrick Sean Mulligan, he was named, and a fine broth of a lad. He'd be getting the education and never be knowing such things as famine and the sickness. They'd not be mocking this lad. Aye, there was a great future ahead for this one. Timmy was only 10 when he took on a man-sized job to do his bit. 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, 50 cents a day. It was breaking his poor mother's heart. Maybe this was no land for the Irish. And there were plenty to agree with just that sentiment. Know-nothings they were called. America for the Americans was the idea, against all foreigners. Their slogan, Negroes are black outside, the Irish are black inside. What they were really about was setting the country against the Catholic Church. Said the Irish were part of a papist plot to take over America. And a fair enough number of Americans believed them for a time. No less than 9 governors and over 100 members of Congress got elected with their support. Riots flared in Philadelphia and 2 Catholic churches burned to the ground. It was a convent they destroyed in Boston. In New York, Bishop John Hughes told the mayor if a single Catholic church was burned, the Irish would set the very city afire. They never touched a one. With the help of good, sensible people, the know-nothings was finally whipped. But we'd seen a good bit of hatred shot our way, and it left an unwelcome taste in the mouth. It set Kathleen to dreaming of Ireland. This new land had worn her out and got her yearning for the old sod again. She was forgetting the bad times and remembering only the good. Perhaps we should be going back. I couldn't be raising the passage for the ferry to Hoboken, but I promised we'd go one day, at least for a visit. I was saying it. I was meaning it. But Kathleen wasn't listening. Tuberculosis, the Irish disease. There were some of us wanted no part of the war to free the slaves. I don't defend it, but that's the truth of it. We feared more and more blacks would come north and take our jobs. Without a job, a man is nothing. But in the north, they passed a law drafting our young lads to fight. Though a rich man could pay someone $300 to do his fighting for him. The riots commenced. Irish police against Irish protesters. Hundreds dying, black men lynched, and the colored orphans' asylum set ablaze. A shameful thing it was. My lad, Tim, joined with the Union forces. He wanted to bring credit to the Irish. He really believed all men should be free and equal. A full 200,000 Irish felt likewise and joined up. Even the bandmaster of the Union Army was Irish. Patrick Gilmore by name. Took an old Irish drinking tune and turned it into the popular song of the day. Them that scorned us for being the fighting Irish now cheered the boys of the Irish Brigade, fighting under the Emerald Banner. But many another Irishman fought for the South as true as any for the North. At last it was over and the blacks were free, but things didn't change much for the Irish. It was right back to the buggy and spoon and confetti, but not for Timothy, Patrick, Sean, Mulligan. Tim wouldn't be doing any more hard labor. He was missing an arm. From now on, he'd have to be relying on the good head the Almighty gave him. He began to read anything he could lay his hands on, from Ireland's struggle for freedom to America's revolution and the rights of man and I don't know what else. I didn't follow the half of it, but he was his mother's son, and her whole family had been great ones for politics. Along about this time, some of Timmy's friends were secretly joining the Fenians. Their aim was noble enough: to free Ireland from England's heavy yoke. They collected a whole arsenal of weapons and sailed for the Emerald Isle. Then weren't they all captured once they tried to land? Timmy never joined the Fenians. What attracted him, he said, was working for the Irish here in America. Tammany Hall was a scandalous lot, and I didn't take much to Timmy's choosing to work with him. But he felt if the Irish were ever going to get anywhere, we'd have to get together. We would have to build our own power, Irish power. But for most of us, it was still a day's work for a day's pay, and glad to get it. Almost from the start, we'd been drifting out of the cities, heading west, where a whole new system of canals and waterways was built. Men worked like mules, and for about the same wages. The canal workers gave big cities like Chicago their Irish towns and paddy's quarters. Shanty towns, they were called. And before long, they were building those shanties into whole towns. Union Pacific was pushing tracks west to Utah to meet the Central Pacific coming east from California. For the first time, the whole country was to be united. Now they wanted men to work like mules for half the pay. We didn't have much choice. We worked from our end, and in California, it was the Chinese took on the jobs with Central Pacific. They didn't have much choice either. Many an Irishman fell on those rails from the terrible heat. The winter was the same, with naught but the inner Irish fire to keep them warm. In 1 year, we spiked down 425 miles of track. When we started in Omaha, we numbered 250 souls. When we ended up that grand day in Promontory, we were 10,000 strong. The continent itself was spanned, and everybody was invited to celebrate, except the Chinese. If anybody was thought to be lower than a Mick, 'twas a heathen Chinese. But not much lower. The Lord helps those that help themselves. He never said it would be easy. Timmy was saying it right along. We had to organize. Inside Tammany Hall itself, he was organizing against the graft and corruption there. But in time, the reform group got honest Dan Bradley elected to the New York State Assembly. Over in Pennsylvania, the miners went about it in their own fashion. They were working endless hours in the hellish underground, never knowing when another cave-in would bury a score or more. They formed a secret society and chilled to the marrow the bones of the bosses and mine owners. Sometimes dressed in women's clothes, they called themselves the Molly Maguires. They started out fair enough, but ended up murdering. And the whole thing came to a sudden and sorry finish when the Pinkertons nabbed 19 of the Mollies red-handed and hung them by their necks. But it wasn't all violence, thank heaven. We started up again with the Knights of Labour. Father Donoghue feared it would make socialists of us all. But something had to be done, even if we had to do it in secret at first. Our women joined in the fight for an 8-hour day and child labor laws. Oh, Kathleen, you should have been there. My own working days are over. I've come to live with Timothy and his family in a fine East Side flat. It's a whole new century opening up. Some of the greenhorns coming off the boats now think we've made it. The truth is, for most of us, it's still a struggle. My own Timmy stayed in politics. It became his whole life. Politics is a thieving business, I tell him. But he just winks and says a pickpocket only needs one good arm. Besides, says he, if you want to have a say in how things are run, you've got to get into politics. Maybe Timmy's right. Anyway, today, Timmy's son, me own grandson, is a city councilman. In a few more years, there might be an Irishman in the Supreme Court. Or even an Irish ambassador.